Let's take a quick peek at week 1 of the college football season. We honor week 0. We respect week 0. I cannot wait for Hawaii at Vandy. I cannot wait for Notre Dame and Navy to play in Ireland. But even so, it's a nice little appetizer to the entree that will be week 1. And there's some questions that we need answers because we've got some enormous games. And the game that I think most of us have circled is that Sunday game in Orlando. LSU and Florida State had an instant classic kind of a game last year in New Orleans. They said, run that back, Turbo. We're in Orlando this year. So what are some of the questions that we need answers to as it pertains to that game specifically? A lot of buzz right now around Florida State. A lot of buzz around Jordan Travis, the quarterback for the Noles. And my question in this game for Florida State is, does Jordan Travis meet the moment? Because in a game like this with college football playoff implications in the week 1 of the season, this is the kind of game where your stud quarterback steps up and just says, look, I'm him today. We saw AR do it last year against Utah in the Swamp. I'm not saying I need Jordan Travis to have Anthony Richardson kind of numbers, but I would say I think that there's a lot of opportunity for him in this game to absolutely flash. Not just because they got Keon Coleman in the portal, not just because they got Jaheim Bell in the portal, not just because they got Johnny Wilson, but because of what LSU has in the secondary. I'm not knocking the personnel they have. I'm just saying it's week 1. It'll be their first game together, and they're still trying to, I think, get settled on the back end there. So the personnel will be good, but I'm telling you, I think there's going to be some opportunity for Florida State to take some shots deep. And to be real, I think LSU's defensive front is going to ask Jordan Travis to beat them. I think that front 7 with Harold Perkins, Mason Smith, who was hurt in this game a season ago, and they're really excited about this coming year, they're going to do their best to take away the run game. They're going to say, Jordan Travis, if you beat us through the air, so be it, but we're going to make you prove it. And so for Florida State to win this game, you need your stud to step up because this is the game where whoever loses, you lose your mulligan for the college football playoff. You can still win the conference. You can still make a run and finish the year with 1 loss. But the reality is, when it comes to Selection Sunday, if you're not undefeated, more than likely you are leaving your fate in somebody else's hands. And both these teams have aspirations to make that Final Four and to be in the big dance. This game will have massive implications. It is a massive legacy game, in my opinion, for Jordan Travis. On the other side of that, how about Jayden Daniels? We sat down with him at SEC Media Days, and the first question we asked him is, man, there's been a lot of talk about y'all wanting to stretch the ball downfield a little bit more, be a little bit more vertical in the pass game. And I loved his answer to that. He's like, honestly, it's a mindset thing. Like, we just have to kind of let it rip. When we got plays there, we got playmakers on the outside, like, let's get after it. And so my question is, that's great to say, but how far along is LSU in that approach? How far along are they from behind closed doors doing that during spring football and in fall camp to week 1, to game 1, to making that a reality? Because last year for LSU, I mean, the average completion was 6 yards. The longest completion was 22. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that's not good enough to beat Florida State. It wasn't good enough last year. It won't be good enough this coming season. And the reason why that is, you got to make this secondary of Florida State play honest with you. If those safeties are triggering down to 7 yards, or they're, heck, maybe even playing in the box at times, they can help in run support. And when they can help in run support, that means they're probably not worried about all the real estate they're leaving open on the back end because they're daring Jayden Daniels to throw the ball deep. So what I'd watch for in this game, if I'm an LSU fan, I'm saying early on, do we get a deep pass to Kyron Lacey streaking down the sideline? Maybe it's a seam route over the middle. Do we at least just swing the bat a little bit and try to hit one out of the park? Because even just trying to do that, even just throwing it deep and having it be broken up and incomplete, okay, whatever, we got 2nd and 10, that forces the defense to at least understand that, oh, okay, they could try that. Oh, okay, they're willing to let it rip a little bit here. It's not going to be this dink and dunk thing we saw last year. It's not going to be 6 yards of completion. They're going to challenge us vertically. They're going to keep us honest. That's all I'm asking LSU to do. Just keep them honest. Because if you can keep them honest, you keep that defense off balance. I've said it before. It's not specific to Florida State. But for LSU, I don't know how you defend them if you can't add extra numbers to the box. Because Jayden Daniels can run the football. Josh Williams can run the football. And if you can keep those safeties back, that's a lot of real estate to work with all over the field. So that's a big question I have for Florida State and for LSU in that football game. Now, College game day. announced yesterday, and it was just a beautiful sight to see. It was like seeing an old friend, seeing a promo pop up on your Twitter sphere. I'm still calling it Twitter. I don't know what they're calling it now, but I'm not calling it whatever they want to call it. Seeing that alert that College Game Day has picked a location. They're headed to Charlotte. They're coming to your city. It's South Carolina. It's North Carolina. I don't care. It's a neutral site game. I just love that we got ball back. And the matchup I'm watching in this game, my big question, is the North Carolina secondary that has been revitalized through the portal now versus Spencer Rattler. Because last year, North Carolina, before they hit the portal and added some pieces, they allowed 270 yards a game through the air. Folks, that ain't good. That ain't not going to get it done against South Carolina. And South Carolina, to the same token, you saw Spencer Rattler be two different versions of himself from the first 3 quarters of the season to November. And so the question I have is, do we get November Spencer Rattler? And do we see an improved North Carolina secondary? Because as far as I'm concerned, North Carolina is walking into this game with a bit of a weak jaw. And it's on Spencer Rattler to deliver that knockout punch and land the perfect blow to be able to take advantage of that. Now, like I said, it's not the same cats that North Carolina had last year in the secondary. They've improved that, but schematically, they got to be better regardless. Rattler had more interceptions than touchdowns before getting to November. So I think there's plays to be made, and if Rattler picks up where he left off last year, South Carolina could really get rolling here and could make this thing very, very interesting. When I say interesting, it could be over by halftime if they're able to get the kind of success they had last year against Tennessee and the success they had against Clemson. Like, you hear what I'm saying. For North Carolina, though, if they can just hold it down on the back end, and I'm not saying they limit them to like less than 200 yards passing. I'm not saying they get 2-3 interceptions. I'm just saying, can you be serviceable in the secondary? Well, guess who you have trotting onto the field after you force a 3-and-out? You got Drizzy Drake May, who, for a lot of people's money, is the best quarterback in college football, not named Caleb Williams. So if you allow him to have his say on this game, all bets are off. But I'm excited for that one, man. That's going to be a whole lot of fun. Whole lot of fun to see which one of those teams comes out swinging and which team is able to put it together first. I'm curious to see, because remember, North Carolina, new offensive coordinator, South Carolina, new offensive coordinator. Very, very curious what version of these teams we get in week 1. Golly, I just love that we're talking about this. This is absolutely phenomenal. On Thursday of week 1, we got Florida and we got Utah. Florida going to Salt Lake City. And my question for that game when it pertains to Florida, the defensive depth. And defensive depth typically shows itself throughout the course of a season because you get beat up. It's a long season, especially in the SEC. You got grown men just absolutely beating the absolute snot out of each other. And for Florida last year, we saw that defensive line, especially, like that war on them the duration of the season. There were times in the 3rd and 4th quarter where Florida just wasn't able to have enough gas in the tank. Well, we're going to find out really early about this defensive depth that is supposedly improved because there's 2 things that Utah has that's going to expose that. And the first has nothing to do with the team that Utah is, but everything that the location is of Salt Lake City. They're at altitude. And when you're at altitude, for those of you that have experienced it, you understand the air, it just feels like there's not enough of it to go around. It's hard to catch your breath. It used to feel one way to run 10 yards, and now you run 10 yards and you feel like you're about to just go meet Jesus. Like, that's how it feels when you're at altitude and you're not prepared. So for Florida, they're going to have to rotate now, especially on the defensive line. That's going to be crucial. The other part of this, though, is Utah, they run the football really, really well. Ja'Quinden Jackson, I think he's still breaking tackles against USC right now. USC had like 150 missed tackles last year, and I think Ja'Quinden Jackson accounted for like a third of those. Just ridiculous running the football. They averaged 5.5 yards a carry last year on the ground. Good for number 7 in the country. So they're going to challenge you now if you're Florida. They're going to force you to show that you have a second unit that can come in there and not have a substantial drop-off from that first unit. If Florida can play strong in the trenches, they're going to have a game. They're going to be able to have a really good chance to repeat what they did last year in Gainesville. Now, on the other side of that, Cam Rising tore his ACL in the Rose Bowl. Dude looks straight out of Yellowstone. The question I have for him is, how healthy is he? Because if he's healthy, remember, Utah had a phenomenal year last year. They won the Pac-12, and they had a shot in the Rose Bowl. And they had a really strong season last year, in large part due to Cam Rising, but they didn't beat Florida last year. And one of the reasons why they didn't beat Florida was because of Cam Rising throwing an interception in the end zone. Utah was charging down the field, and I fully expected, watching from my couch, that Utah and Cam Rising were about to punch it in and walk it off in the swamp. And that didn't happen. And if you want to be real, probably a lot of the blame falls on Cam Rising. Now, he kept him in that game, to keep it a buck with you, but you understand what I'm saying. This game, I think, is a little bit personal to him. And so if he's able to be healthy, I would imagine we see a charged up, focused, locked in version of Cam Rising that we've come to expect from him throughout his career at Utah. However, if he's not able to go, if he's not able to be a version of himself that we've come to know of Cam Rising, well, then you throw in a backup quarterback into the mix. And honestly, the good people in Salt Lake City, I don't even think they know who their backup quarterback is going to be this coming season. You got Barnes, you got a couple of freshmen duking it out. Like, we'll see what happens. But any way you slice it, you're throwing in an inexperienced quarterback against an SEC defense. I know it's against Florida. I know it's at home. But even so, an SEC defense, a lot of physical freaks on that side of the ball for the Gators. Like, I would not like that situation if I'm a Utah fan. That could be the great equalizer for them. So we'll see what happens there, but those are my questions when it comes to that game. And one more, though. We got a little Monday night special. We got Clemson and we got Duke. Now, it's actually not a neutral site. They are going to Durham, North Carolina, to play the Blue Devils. And Duke was very, very quietly a really good team last year. I mean, the defense last year, I think they only gave up around 23 points a game. Now, they replaced a lot on that side of the ball, but even so, if Clemson doesn't go in there with their A game, we could very well see a situation where you're kind of tuning in and out of the game on Monday night. You got people over, you're grilling out, the game's kind of on in the background, and you go to halftime and you say, oh, what? It's 17-21? Clemson's only up by 4? Dare I say it's 14-10, and Duke's actually up with Riley Leonard playing quarterback. So a lot of the question marks for me in this game fall on what Cade Klubnik's going to be for Clemson. Because right now we only have 2 data points on him. This will be our third. The first data point, where he absolutely went ballistic against North Carolina in the ACC title game. A lot of us were already calling our shot and putting in future bets for Cade Klubnik to win the Heisman in 2023. Like, call it what it was. And then you had the Orange Bowl against Tennessee with a secondary that caught a lot of flack throughout the duration of the season, statistically one of the worst in the country. He threw 2 picks, threw for a lot of yards, but dude just had a lot on his plate, was running for his life a lot of the night. We have 2 different sample sizes of Cade Klubnik and what he's going to be going forward. So it's still way too early to have a definitive statement on him. But in this game, I think we get a very good picture of what he's going to be in 2023. I'm not saying we define him by this game, but I think the more information we get a better picture for him, which is, I think, a fairly obvious statement. But Duke is going to be a good test. Like, the branding of Duke football, I think, gets a little bit disrespected because of how good the basketball is and what Coach K was there and all that. Like, it's a good football team now. It's a very good football team with a quarterback that very well could be in the first round next year. So Duke's going to give him problems if Cade Klubnik does not bring his A game. What does that third data point hold for the Tigers and for Cade Klubnik? I can't wait to see, but I just love that we're talking about week 1. It's a beautiful thing. Absolutely beautiful thing. Very glad to have y'all locked in. 30 some odd days away. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.